Welcome back to Backcountry Amateur Radio. Today I want to talk about getting licensed as a ham radio operator. Getting the technician license is the first level, but this will do will answer many of your communication problems when you're in the backcountry. Whether you're a river guide, a backcountry skier, a guide, or a climber or a mountaineer, whatever you're doing, usually the risks of not communicating or having your communication impeded by cheap radios or making bird noises really can have drastic effects on what happens out there. So let's get away from FRS radios. Let's get away from these sold as one pair, travel pack, or whatever, and let's get into radios that actually do the job, communicate, keep us safe. We also really like the idea of being able to rendezvous in the backcountry. You can't do that with FRS radios. Um, Not like you can if you got an amateur radio license. Which leads me to my first story. This map, is the yurt system up in the Uintas run by the Bear River Outdoor Recreation Area. I was approaching my friends from the parking lot on the business end of the start here of this route. It was 5.5 miles line of sight to where my friends were, and we had radios and we couldn't communicate. It was at that point that I realized I needed a better system for inter-party communication, group communication, and emergency communication and coordination. So, the need for better communication has led you here. You discover ham radio or amateur radio. You don't know any ham radio operators. So what do? How do you get going with this? And how do you get the insight you need in order to get your license and get going on the radio? So I'm just doing a quick Google search here. Get licensed. Get licensed as an amateur radio operator. And I'm going to take this link to the ARRL. And the ARRL, or ARRL.org, has a lot of information about getting licensed. It can help you, the website can help you find a place to take a test. It can also help you understand a little bit more about the hobby of amateur radio and kind of how it's used generally. There's not a lot of us folks in the outdoor community who even know anything about it. I never knew about it, and I was 37 years old by the time I first heard about it. So you can continue to peruse this website, get a little bit more information. It talks about the technician class license and some of the privileges you get, the airwaves that you can get on, and so on and so forth. But the next thing you want to look at is what kind of materials you need to get licensed. And this website also talks a little bit about that. But instead of buying it from their website, I recommend hop on Amazon if you have a Prime account. And this is the Technician Class License Manual, which actually has the testing information in the back, but I like the spiral bound version. On the website Ham Radio Prep, you can actually skip the book and sign up for an online course, and they will direct you to testing, so on and so forth. And this is actually something I've seen many ham radio operators do, and it seems to be working really well for them. So you can go that route and pay them for the course. They have the technician only license. If you want to pursue the communication objective of ham radio more, I would recommend getting a general license. And so doing that course seems like it's a pretty good value where you kind of do the both of them at the same time. And the next thing is, how do I find a community, or how do I get involved, or how do I find a group of people who might know about ham radio? So type in your local area into the search bar, and then ham radio club or amateur radio club. So for instance, Colorado Springs Amateur Radio Club. In this example, I'm talking about Colorado Springs CERT. CERT is Community Emergency Response Team. These groups usually know who or where to find the ham radio groups in your community. So remember that, CERT. So type in your community and CERT, C-E-R-T. And the next one you could look into is the search and rescue groups. Oftentimes, search and rescue groups can coordinate with ham radio operators, because ham radio operators can open up frequencies that search and rescue teams just don't have access to, unless the search and rescue members are ham radio operators as well. So there's those ways you can find people who know about ham radio or local ham radio groups or clubs, and that can help get you going. So now you have a plan for learning. You've got a book or online study or both, and hopefully you'll have some local resources that know about ham radio or some people who can help get you set up on equipment. And the more information you know about the hobby, um, the more it will help guide you to how it applies to you. And the next step for you is to simply learn how to communicate across these distances in the backcountry. There's intergroup communication, and then there's the how do I connect to a repeater? These long distances of 40 miles and using a handheld radio in order to do that.
What I'm saying, what I'm hoping here is that you will get your ham radio license and join me and the other ham radio operators out there in the backcountry, whether it is to just expand the hobby or to communicate at a distance with your partners, facilitate rescue if necessary, or just have a better way to cover the gap between you and the party you want to rendezvous with. So when you're doing intergroup communication, mixed terrain, if you can communicate with ham radio, you're going to be a whole lot better off and better understood using the ham radio frequencies. And if you need to use that repeater across that big distance, you're going to get somebody. People are always listening. And so where cell phones don't work and where intergroup communication just isn't enough, there's ham radio can get you out. And I'm not going to say this should be your 100% fallback plan, because a lot of us who are out there, we probably ought to also have a GPS enabled locator beacon. So things to think about, but this is part of the puzzle. Next video on this subject, we'll probably talk about equipment a little bit, but work on getting that test. Use these resources. I've tried to keep this video really short and sweet so that you can click on stuff and go to the source, get the book, get the information, get a community behind you, get your test, and get on the air. And one more thing, if you like what we're doing here, trying to promote backcountry radio use that is beyond the store-bought radios and something a bit more effective, join me at Backcountry Amateur Radio, and please subscribe and hit that reminder bell, and please leave some comments. That helps me figure out the direction of this channel. All right, we'll see you down the trail.